There is a phase in your spiritual life that never shows up in testimonies. It doesn't make it into highlight clips. It's not celebrated on stages or in sermons. It's the phase where you're doing everything right, and yet God feels silent. You pray with intensity, you seek Him sincerely, you fast with purpose. But heaven doesn't respond at the speed you expected. And the more you press in, the more it feels like your words disappear before they even reach above. And slowly, it starts to wear you down on the inside. Because the real problem isn't just the delay, it's what that delay starts doing in your mind. You begin to wonder if you did something wrong, if you lost favor, if God's promises were really meant for you, or if you simply believe too much. And then comes the hardest confrontation of all. Will you stay faithful even when you don't feel anything? Or do you only stay when there's a response, confirmation, and emotion? This is the point where most people break. Because the silence of God exposes what noise used to hide, the real level of your faith. Not the faith you declare out loud, but the faith that holds you together when there are no signs. And here is the truth most people aren't ready to face. God's silence is not comfortable, because it was never meant to comfort you. It was meant to transform you. It breaks illusions. It destroys emotional dependency. It confronts human expectations about how God should move. And while you think you're being ignored, God is allowing a setup where the greatest spiritual battle isn't happening outside of you, but inside of you. Between giving up or staying, between doubt or trust, between listening to your anxiety or learning to hear the voice of God in the silence. If you stay until the end of this video, something inside you is going to shift. You won't just understand why God allows silence, you'll start seeing this season differently. You'll realize how deeply it's connected to the fulfillment of God's promises, and how to discern His direction even when everything looks still. And more than that, you'll walk away with a conviction stronger than emotion itself. God is not absent, He is working in depth. There is a kind of exhaustion that isn't physical, it's spiritual. It's when you keep walking, but inside you don't feel the same strength anymore. Your prayers start to feel automatic. Your hope begins to fluctuate. Even what once motivated you now feels distant. And the hardest part isn't fighting external problems. It's fighting the thoughts that rise in the silence. Thoughts that whisper, "You're alone. Nothing is changing. Maybe God isn't hearing you." And the worst part is that in that moment, you can't prove otherwise. Because there are no visible signs, no immediate answers, no emotional confirmation, only emptiness and the decision to keep going anyway. And this is exactly where many people quit the process, not realizing they were being shaped for something greater. Because the spiritual desert doesn't look productive, but it is one of the most fertile places for transformation. 1. God's silence exposes the truth you were avoiding. When everything is moving fast, you can hide a lot of things. You call it faith, when it's often emotional dependence. You call it direction, when it's really convenience. But in silence, there are no distractions. Everything rises to the surface. Your insecurities, your hidden fears, your real motivation for seeking God. Silence doesn't create these things. It reveals what was already there. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. Psalm 139:23. And that revelation is necessary. Because God doesn't build destiny on illusion. But here's the uncomfortable part. If God already revealed it, why hasn't He responded yet? Why does the silence continue? The answer is on the next level. 2. God's silence builds in you what answers never could. There are things only time and process can form. Spiritual maturity doesn't come in comfort. It comes in environments where you must choose trust without understanding. In the spiritual desert, you learn to depend on God in a real way, not an emotional one. You learn to stay without applause, to obey without guarantees, to keep going even when everything in you wants to stop. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Matthew 4:4. God is not just taking you somewhere. He is shaping you into someone who can carry what's coming. Because receiving without preparation can destroy what was promised. But something even deeper is happening in this silence. Something invisible to the eyes, but crucial for your future. 3. God's silence trains your spiritual sensitivity. You were conditioned to expect God to speak loud, clear, immediate. But God operates on deeper levels. He speaks in subtle direction, in peace that doesn't make logical sense, in inner discomfort that keeps you from certain paths. And after the fire, a still small voice. 1 Kings 19:12. At first, you don't notice it. But over time, your perception changes. Your sensitivity grows. You begin to discern what you once ignored. And here is the secret that changes everything. You don't learn to recognize God's voice when everything is clear. You learn when everything is silent. But then the real question comes. If silence reveals, builds, and trains, what is the ultimate purpose of it all? God's silence is not a gap between promises. It is the environment where promises begin to form inside you. It is a spiritual laboratory where God develops character, endurance, discernment, and depth. Because if God gave you everything immediately, you would have the outcome, but not the capacity to sustain it. And God doesn't just work with delivery. He works with preparation. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God. Romans 8:28. Nothing is on pause. Nothing is wasted. While you think you're waiting, God is working in unseen areas. And often, the greatest miracle is not what God does for you, but what He forms within you during the waiting. Joseph received a promise, but no explanation. Between the dream and the fulfillment came silence, rejection, injustice, and years of seeming forgetfulness. But God never left. The Lord was with Joseph. Genesis 39:2. David was anointed king, but lived as a fugitive for years. Desert, persecution, silence. But that process was shaping a king after God's own heart. I waited patiently for the Lord. Psalm 4:1. And Jesus. Before any public miracle, He was led into the wilderness. No crowds. No applause. No visible answers. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness. Matthew 4:1. The pattern is clear. Before manifestation, there is silence. Before promise fulfillment, there is process. If you are in that place right now, where everything feels stuck, where God feels distant, where your prayers feel like they hit the ceiling, hold on to this. God is not absent. He is deep. The silence you feel is not rejection. It is formation. Every tear you've cried in private, every prayer that seemed unanswered, every day you chose to keep going, even when you felt nothing, all of it is building something inside you that will sustain what is coming. And one day, you'll look back and realize it was never empty silence. It was God working on a level you couldn't see. If this message spoke to you, comment below. I trust God even in the silence. And if you want to grow spiritually, learn more about spiritual warfare, walk through your desert season with purpose, and develop sensitivity to hear God's voice, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here, you won't just receive words. You'll receive direction to walk through the silence and step into the fullness of God's promises with real depth.